we've since been joined by Mr. Abba Kyari, who is a former chairman, Nigeria, that's Economic Summit Group, NUDG, isn't it? All right, he joins us from our studios in Abuja. Mr. Kyari, thank you for joining us today. So, yeah, we're all looking forward to, at least it's a big day tomorrow in many states. It's closer to the people tomorrow, much more than the presidential elections. What are your expectations tomorrow?
First of all, the name is Mr. Booker. Kyari is my first name. The expectations are very simple and clear. I mean, expectations of any elections are clear, and that is that there has to be a clear, clean, transparent, and credible elections. And by the way, if one looks at our elections in the last, since 1999, there has been some tremendous improvements. I think, which basically goes to say that one of the institutions in Nigeria is making gradual improvement, and that is INEC. We also must commend them for what they have done over the years as things go through, because of course there was one of the topics discussed earlier, which is the electronic voting, is one of the things that I live by. I used to be in Silicon Valley, and I was involved in creation of a lot of gadgets that people use today. And the only country on earth that is doing any kind of electronic voting directly in their homes is Estonia. And Estonia is unique in the sense that, number one, it's all connected. Number two, it's a young nation. Number three, it's small in population. It's all urbanized. And therefore, there are no blind spots or disenfranchisement per se. And even though there still exists the elements of security in terms of protecting the vote as it goes through from one end to the other, it is something that they could manage to experiment, and they did it fairly well. Now, for a country like Nigeria, that would be a major challenge. But as time goes on and as things get better, I believe that we will get better and more improved outcomes. Now, same thing with the next election tomorrow. Our expectations is to make it better than the last elections 2 weeks ago. And if that happens, it would mean that we have arrived, so to speak. Because from the point of view of the global investor community, and by the way, we cannot isolate ourselves economically speaking to say to hell with foreign investors. We can't. Anything we do, they watch. And if it is clean and it's clear and transparent, then it would actually put us up a notch, not only in Committee of Nations, but also locally in our own region in Africa. We cannot claim to be the largest or the biggest or the, whatever, if we can't conduct something that is of fundamental, fundamental rights of our citizens cannot be protected. And I think there would come a time, as also earlier discussed, things like ballot snatching used to be done to inflate numbers. Today it is disruption. And by the time they realize that that is not possible, they would move on to something else until we completely block all avenues of what I would call leakages or disruptions. And I believe that the expectations for us for tomorrow, particularly for me, is to see a more sanguine, a better and less violent elections. But by the way, the life of an average Nigerian, the life of one single Nigeria should not be lost because of elections.
Mr. Kyari, let me take you back to the conversation about the technology deployment and all of that for our elections. what are the hurdles we need to cross if we are going to achieve reliable data from electronic voting or deployment of technology for elections? What are the hurdles we need to cross ASAP?
I think we need to start, I believe that we need to start from the very first. And the first thing is, are we even accrediting and voting electronically? Right now, what I have is I have a token, which is electronic, but I go to the polling station and something happens. Now, let's resolve that, meaning that 100% of everything we do, the verification, should be done electronically. And that is a simple thing. It doesn't require network, by the way, because it's a device and a token, handshaking, and that's all. Yeah. Now, then the second thing would be for us to conclude an election at a polling unit. Results are printed out and pasted. But not only that, results then need to be aggregated to the collation centers electronically. That way there will not be human error. However, that requires complete coverage of every inch of Nigeria by communication network. Is it doable? Yes, indeed, it is. For those of us that are in the technology field previously, many nations have achieved that. And Nigeria today is, quite fairly well covered, even though there are places that have not been covered. And these are businesses. They go to where there are larger groups of people that would utilize their network. And where those gaps exist, government can step in and become part of that network, so to speak. Okay. Now, once those are done, then we reach a level where we could say from even the state or zonal collation centers all the way to the control room of INEC or the network, the master control center, then that should also be achieved. And by the way, when you do things electronically, even the information and the data that comes out of INEC becomes richer. For example, the release of people that have collected their PVC this time around came extremely late. Now, when you are doing things electronically, those things could even be done on a real-time basis, meaning every hour or every day, the results could be updated. And that way, the political strategists of the parties could have actually what they need to do in terms of spend or advertisement in those zones, etc., etc. And the same thing, as the voting is taking place, we could segment the data into male, female, into age groups or demographics, etc., etc. And that way, it gives us a sense. Even for the person who has won the elections, he or she would know where to address certain concerns, because it is usually something that is basic pocketbook issues that would make the potential voter go out to vote.
Okay, Mr. Kerry.
So in that regard, technology is not just about blocking disruptions and all
right, Mr. Kerry,
and ballot snatching and so on and so forth.
Okay.
It also helps us in planning better down the road.
Now, one more thing. Well, that's futuristic, and I'm sure that we're going to get there pretty soon. But tomorrow we are using these smart card readers, and sometimes some of them don't work from previous experiences. Some of them, they don't work. What is the problem? Some people are not able to, read their fingers, or card readers, the cards, and the machines don't handshake, as you said it the other time. What exactly is the issue, and how can we resolve that towards tomorrow's election?
For this election, we're still going to be using the same devices that we've had in the elections 2 weeks ago. Going forward, and I mean forward, possibly to the next general elections, or even some of the supplementary elections that would be coming, maybe the state governors' elections 2 years from now and thereabouts. What we need to do is ruggedize, because we now have an understanding of the nature, our environmental nature of Nigeria, the dust, the heat, temperature, humidity, etc., etc. And also in training the people that are handling those devices. The two combination, everything is an iteration. It's an iterative process. Today, if we get 80% working, then the next goal would be to up it to 90 or 95%. And once you reach a level of 99%, then those are issues that, when there is a failure, the failure might be temporary, it might delay for an hour or 30 minutes so that another device can be retrieved somewhere else. Those are things. Or by the time we realize the total population of the polling units, we could also have 2 or 3% of the devices configured for those units, but are still closed, and then they would be retrieved when 1 or 2 of the units, those polling units, are malfunctioning. The other thing is that, these are devices that are more or less imported. Now, the next item for us, when we look at the general environment, we talk about lack of jobs and so on and so forth. What about if we are somehow building it ourselves? Now, of course, there would be all kinds of things that can come into that, including security and all of that. But you would find that when you are building it, it would be fit for purpose. You are building it for the environment. And the entrepreneurs would then be challenged to ensure that we get something that is credible and that
Mr.
can
Kerry,
work.
Let me jump in briefly.
Because when you bring in something from Europe.
Let me jump in briefly on this one. When you remember that the National Assembly and the state houses of assembly, they, when they vote for several bills, we don't even know who's voting for what. So does that encourage, discourage, or you're nonplussed about that, especially as we all most look forward to us getting to the next stage of our electoral system, electronic voting?
The laws, even the last electoral modification to the Electoral Act was not assented to by Mr. President. I think it's a human nature, right? If we want to modify the laws, let's do it very early in the life of the new administration. That way, elections are so far away and so far removed that people would debate things rationally without thinking of any ulterior motives on the parts of the 2 sides of the aisle or the 3 sides of the aisle, depending on if we have 3 or 4 parties in the National Assembly. And with that, then, what we would have is an improvement that starts very early on, and it gives the institution that is responsible for conducting the elections enough time to order things, to test things, and to train personnel before the next wave of elections. The tendency in Nigeria is usually hurry up and wait. We wait until the last minute, and then you see us scrambling, and it makes mockery of our entire planning process.
Azilzi, the INEC has said votes will not count without the card reader. What happens if the card reader doesn't work at a particular polling unit?
I think Mr. Kiari helped me answer that actually.
Yes, but we need to consider all of that. But what happens tomorrow?
Whatever the problems, challenges, we'll try to fix it. If we cannot fix it, it will be replaced, and that's in accordance with the guidelines within a reasonable time. But if for any reason we cannot replace it within a reasonable time, we're supposed to come back the following day to do the election, or on an appointed day to do the election, if it will have an effect on the overall result that will emanate subsequently.
Okay, Mr. Ozzy, just before we let you go, though, because time is very tight now, and we're expecting that a lot more improvement will happen tomorrow. Do you foresee, for instance, situations whereby your logistics is it's still bringing out the results such as we had in the previous election? Will we get over that?
I believe we will. I believe so. But let me put this in context. In the election in Ekiti, we achieved, I think it was 92% prompt opening of polls. In the off-cycle election in Osun, we achieved 100%. So we had built a template. You know, Ekiti was improving on Anambra, Osun was improving in Ekiti, and we had built a template going forward and gained some momentum in terms of our logistics delivery getting into 23rd of February. But unfortunately, things happened, and there are several reasons for that. It ranged from force majeure, act of God, in terms of heavy downpour, unseasonal rainfall in a place like some parts of Abia, for example. There was an issue of security challenges, so you cannot mobilize and move out when you have staccato of machine gun fire all around you, grenades exploding, explosives. You cannot move. You cannot jeopardize the lives of the officials, the lives of voters, the lives of anybody, you know, in that kind of case. So you will not move until there's a relative calm restored. There was the absence of electoral officials. Some people just disappeared. They just disappeared with the material, so they did not show up. So that's our own fault. So people we recruited. The issues of security, getting enough security before you move, and there are also the issues of challenges with some car owners or car drivers on late. So there are varied issues. The force majeure we can't do anything about, and if there's such the weather is inclement and we cannot mobilize to get there at 8 a.m., there isn't too much we can do. But all other factors are human factors. And I think after the 23rd February election, we met with the resident electoral commissioners, which you covered, and we brainstormed on this, and matching orders were given. Look, we must ensure we address these human factors. The biggest challenge there will be the road transport workers or the owners of vehicles. If you negotiate with them and agree on the price, and they come on that day and say, we're not coming unless you increase it, that's a big challenge. But fortunately, we have a very cooperative stakeholder and partner in terms of the NURTW and NATO as well, the Transport Owners Associations. And I think we've reached some level of agreement, and they will will the big stake, or they will know what to do to their members if they try to blackmail us on election day. So I think that has been resolved. So these other human our officials have been warned. A couple of them were handed over to the security agencies and will be prosecuted, because under Section 123, if there's dereliction of duty and you don't have a good reason for that, you can be prosecuted. You can go to jail. You can be fined. So they are aware of that, and in the retraining of our staff, we told them that. The rack centers are to be opened this, I think, from 12 noon today, and these are closer to polling units. So these are some of the measures we have taken to ensure that there's much better logistics delivery. It was not as we wanted it on the 23rd, and that is regrettable. We certainly, with the things and plans put in place now, the implementation of that, which we think will be successful, you'll see a much better election, and our people should get there, our officials should get there on the field on time. And if I may quickly add, my apologies to Wale. I hope he did not think that I in any way suggested that he did not know the legal process and things. My apologies. That was not intended if it came across like that.
Okay, so he nods in acceptance, and I also like to assume that he's satisfied appreciably with the level of voter education, particularly when they turn out tomorrow. Gentlemen, I want to thank you both for coming in. Oluwole Osaze Uzi, who is the INEC National Commissioner on Voter Education, and then Wale Ogwande, the President of Voter Awareness Initiative. Thank you both for coming on the verdict this morning.